But you went from a house hacker to someone who's now, has professionals investing over $100 million of multifamily units. So let's start with a very basic question of, I'm a house hacker here in Chicago. I want to be John Kasman. I want to get that jump into multifamily. Where do I begin? What is the next step?
Well, the next step is definitely not to begin flipping, right? And the reason I say that is that was a step I took, and it was more quicksand. And the reason is this: there's nothing wrong with flipping or any strategy, but if you want to go down a path, you need to follow the logical step down that path. I started to try to explore different things and actually ran into some issues and realized, you know what? The best path to scale a multifamily portfolio is to figure out how to be involved in more multifamily deals, not trying this other thing over here that you have no desire to actually be a part of. So, if I were going back and I could talk to John or anyone who wants to be like John back then, it would be, how do you scale, into commercial real estate? So going from the 2 to 4 unit space to the 5+ unit space. So the first thing I actually did at that time was we bought an 8-unit building. My wife and I, we had saved money. And at this point, we had done a couple other smaller deals, smaller 2 to 4 unit deals. And this was working. It was working, right? I mean, this theory, this thing I'd read about in books and talked to people at these meetups and, listen to folks on podcasts, it was actually working out. So this was the test. The test was moving out of the 2 to 4 unit space and going into the 5+ unit space. We bought an 8-unit building in Hermosa. So if your listeners are familiar with where the Hermosa market is, this is back in 2016. So we, at the time, were looking more in Avondale, Logan Square area. I'd owned stuff in Avondale. I'd owned stuff in North Center. And I felt like Logan Square, Avondale adjacent was where I really wanted to focus. Hermosa obviously was a little west of there. And while I didn't love the area, it made sense. And I felt like, hey, the way I'm looking at this is the same way I think renters are going to look at it. They're going to want to be in Logan Square, want to be in Avondale. Prices are a little higher than they want it to be. And they start looking a little further west and ultimately get to Hermosa. And that deal gave me the confidence that we could do it. That deal actually didn't work out that great for me, to be honest with you. I mean, we sold it at a small profit. I really did not execute the business plan on that. But I learned so much from that deal that it gave me all the confidence in the world to scale into the larger properties. So I would say, hey, find you a property where, again, whether it be 5 to 10 units, 5 to 12 units, big enough to push the envelope and to stretch you from what you're doing today, but also to really shore up and tighten up on some of these processes, maybe working with a third-party property management company and really understanding how to grow and manage a real estate portfolio.
Just a quick comment there. We have units at the Belmont-Pulaski area that's not quite Avondale. And in our rental listing, we've been saying Avondale adjacent. So you're the first person besides myself to hear it. So I'm not going crazy. I like it.
First of all, I would call that Avondale. So I had a property that was, it's probably right around where you're at. I believe I can't remember the street that's just north of Avondale or of Belmont. It might be 1 or 2 streets north of Belmont. And then it was like literally the next street west. So, man, that's Avondale.
If you're north of Belmont, you go Melrose, School, Roscoe, and going south, you got Barry, Nelson, Fletcher, Barry, Fletcher, Nelson.
So Nelson was the street the property was on then. So listen, we put Avondale and no one ever questioned.
6 years ago too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I just want to take a step back there. Your mindset of going and doing the flipping, like, why? Like, what were you thinking at the time? Because I'm sure other people are thinking.
Great question. So as a matter of fact, you mentioned Bree, who was my partner on the Midwest Summit. Bree was actually a big inspiration for me because Bree at the time, she was running a meetup and was one of the first people running a meetup in Chicago. And I attended those meetups. And I remember Bree went from 3 units from the first time I met her. She had 1 3-unit property, and she went from that to 9 units, which I just thought was incredible. Again, keep in mind, I don't know any real estate investors, like real people, right, that I know. So at this time, she's one of the first people that I've seen actually invest, and grow a portfolio. And she went from 3 units to 9 units, which I thought was incredible. Right. And then from the time she went there, I bought my first duplex. So I feel like I'm in the game now. I'm a real estate investor, baby. So when I go to these events, I'm feeling better. I'm figuring out what the next step is. And I remember I bought a 3-unit building. So now I'm like, yo, I got 2 properties. I got 5 units under my belt, baby, crushing it. And she went from 9 units to 90 units. And I said, what? That's how? Like, how, Sway? You like, how you go from 9 to 90? Like, I get 9 to 19, but 9 to 90, 9-0. So I remember just being in awe. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, did you have a windfall? Somebody died? You get a huge inheritance? Like, I just didn't understand. So I asked her, I said, hey, can I take you to breakfast? I just really want to learn a little bit more about how you were able to grow. And we went to breakfast, and the short version is she started working with other investors. And that was really the first time I even remotely thought about that as an option. And what happened in my business is, as you know, when you're starting out, you're using your money, your active income, right? You're taking your day job, your W-2 money, you're saving it up, and you're buying. So I did that with the first couple of deals. I did that with the 8-unit property. And by the time I bought the 8-unit property, we saved up, 6 figures worth of, income, bought this 8-unit property. And I remember feeling dejected, like, dude, I got to go do this again. Like, it's going to take me a year to save $100,000 plus to be able to buy another property. And I just had my second child. So I went back to that conversation, was like, okay. And Bree told me 2 things. She said there's 2 ways she sees people scale in this business. One is they start partnering with other people. The other is they flip properties and then take the income from the flip properties and use that to invest. So I had the bright idea to do both. I wanted to do both. So I was going to flip some properties over here and also start partnering with people over here. The only problem is when I went to flip, I found a guy who was he was a developer, and he was basically doing all the flipping. And all I had to do was come in with the money, put the property under my name, partner with this individual, and he would handle the rest. We split the proceeds 50-50. So on paper, it made sense. And by the way, I mean, this guy he was doing a trolley tour and walking everybody through these projects. And he had 50 people on these tours, and he was doing 6 deals at a time. So, I mean, we were looking at it and watching it and talking to people who had done it. So I felt pretty comfortable with it, but there were some red flags that we ignored. And in short, those projects failed miserably. And I learned another hard lesson, which was, when you're going through that vetting process, you really got to trust your gut and trust the training you do have. Just because somebody has more experience than you doesn't mean that they actually know more than you. They've done it and they're doing it, but a broken clock is right, twice a day. So you have to really understand, why are they having success, and understand what could happen that would change that. And from a business standpoint, I knew those things. I'm like, I've never flipped a property, but I read Jay Scott's book. I've listened to a ton of podcasts on flipping. I've read multiple books on flipping, and all of them tell me to do something different than what you're doing. And ultimately what we found out was these guys had literally the worst business plan I've ever, like, when I finally got the real story and I got the contract and I sat them down, like, you tell me everything I have. And these guys basically went into these deals planning to lose $10,000 a project, and they thought they could make it up at scale. And I'm like, have y'all failed math? If you're losing $10K a deal and you scale that up, you're going the wrong way. That's not the loss leader you want. Like, you have to have another product that actually makes profit. You can't sell milk at a loss and then say, oh, but we're going to get them with the other stuff. So I mean, listen, I went on a tangent. I don't even know what your question was anymore. But my whole point in trying to flip was to generate more income so I'd have more money for multifamily. I never wanted to flip. I only wanted to do multifamily. Flipping was another means to an end. And if you're going to do it, I would say do it yourself, or do it with somebody you trust and who respects your opinion and your thoughts, as opposed to just blindly writing a check to somebody and praying that they don't mess it up.